All they want is something to happen. They're rooting for the president. They don't care about any of this other stuff.
Yeah, so let's get right to that. A Fox News alert on this health care that is on hold. Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now delaying consideration of the GOP health care bill.
Yeah, and why? It's all because of this. Senator John McCain announced he'll be recovering this week from surprise surgery.
Ellison Barber live in Washington, D.C. with the latest details. Ellison, where are we?
Well, doctors at the Mayo Clinic say Senator John McCain underwent surgery on Friday to remove a blood clot from above his left eye. They removed the clot during a, quote, minimally invasive craniotomy with an eyebrow incision. McCain's office says he's staying in Arizona this week on the advice of doctors, but is in, quote, good spirits. Senate leaders are under pressure from the White House to pass health care.
Whatever you might hear on the cable televisions from its defenders, Obamacare is literally imploding.
Republicans missed the first deadline they set for themselves, July 4th. Republican leaders hope to pass the latest health care proposal this week. The bill was on shaky ground to begin with. Without Senator McCain, it's unlikely Senate Republicans have the votes they need to pass it. Now, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says they're tabling the legislation because of McCain's health. In a statement, Majority Leader McConnell said, quote, there are few people tougher than my friend John McCain, and I know he'll be back with us soon. While John is recovering, the Senate will continue our work on legislative items and nominations and will defer consideration of the Better Care Act. For Republicans, repealing and replacing Obamacare is the biggest item this week, but they were having a tough time getting to those 50 votes. Two Republican senators, Senator Rand Paul and Susan Collins, already announced their intention to vote against the latest version of the bill. You combine that with McCain's absence, and that puts the available Republican yes votes at 49. Republicans, of course, need more than that. No word right now on when Republicans expect to reschedule this vote. Abby, Clayton, Todd.
Ellison Barber, thank you so much.
Thanks,
and of course, our thoughts and prayers are with John McCain and his family, hoping for a speedy recovery.
Meanwhile, we got to talk about the CBO numbers, the Congressional Budget Office. Remember a few weeks ago, it was, if you read the news headlines, The Hill and other political outlets are all saying that the CBO numbers, which would take 22 million, this is what their prediction was, 22 million people off of insurance under Obamacare, that this would imperil the Republicans' plans. This was the nail in their coffin. These were the headlines that read a few weeks ago. And now the White House is coming out fighting against the CBO, basically saying these are all fake numbers to begin with, and we shouldn't be paying attention to them.
And it goes to what we were talking about earlier, and the West Wing and the White House feeling like everything is stacked against them, that they have to proactively send out these statements to say to the American people, just so you know, when the CBO comes out with their report and the media is talking about this, a lot of it isn't actually accurate. Here's where we are coming from. So you can read part of this.
Yeah, this is from Mark Short and Brian Blaze. The CBO's methodology, which favors mandates over choice and competition, is fundamentally flawed. As a result, its past predictions regarding health care legislation have not borne much resemblance to reality. Its prediction about the Senate bill is unlikely to fare much better. Although the media and the political left will certainly seize on it, the CBO's estimates will be little more than fake news. So they're laying it all out on the table. But Clayton, I thought you made a really interesting point before when you said you're for the CBO score when it is in your favor.
Right.
You're against it when it's not in your favor.
Well, it's just like poll
James
numbers.
Comey, right? And the
yeah,
FBI.
or poll numbers, when they're not in your favor. Meanwhile, this. Remember Colin Kaepernick kneeling last season? And boy, holy smokes, did people, flip out about this. So he was kneeling before games during the national anthem. And you recall people were flipping out about this. And even teammates were flipping out about this. The NFL was angry about this. There he is before the game. Well, now a Chicago Tribune columnist is coming out basically attacking the Star-Spangled Banner as the problem, calling it a pompous battle song that we'd be playing before NFL games. Listen to this. She has this to say.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So here's what this writer says in her op-ed. She says the Star-Spangled Banner is a pompous battle number spurred by a petition bearing 5 million veteran signatures. Congress designated it to the national anthem in 1931, but it wasn't until 1942 in our entry into World War II that it was played on loudspeakers daily before the games. And she goes on to say that people feel pressured to salute this flag. Why do we do this? We don't salute the flag or use this or do the Star-Spangled Banner before watching a movie at the movie theater. This really made me upset, this op-ed, because what is so wrong with standing for something, with being proud to be an American, standing up next to our flag. And it made me think about our military and how they fight for our freedoms every single day.
She also takes shots at the military.
5 million veterans.
Unbelievable.
She says that before the game, when did we start marching veterans out before every game now? And she said it started when the Pentagon signed this contract with the NFL and started throwing money at the NFL. And it's sort of, she calls it basically like false patriotism.
Right.
And she says the reason that Kaepernick lost his job, is because he wanted to take a stand by kneeling against the Star-Spangled Banner. She says he's a great quarterback. Actually, no, he lost his job because he's not a good quarterback. He's not starting, not because of this, because he wasn't good.
Yeah, but she says that a lot of people need these backup quarterbacks, and instead they're bringing on like felons, people that can be harmful. They're not hiring him because of kneeling, and she said that is far less damage to do than someone that could hurt a team player. This makes no sense, but I think it all goes back to, what do we want our identity to be in this country?
Right.
What do we want to stand for? I think that's what makes this country great.
But a pompous battle song? Yeah. That's what she calls the national anthem, a pompous battle.
We could get into a whole big discussion on salary caps and why Kaepernick should or shouldn't be a player. The fact of the matter is, in this piece, she literally calls out 5 million veterans who offered their signatures so that we do this, so that we make the Star-Spangled Banner a part of our lives, because football is a part of our lives, for better or for worse. Think about that. She just called out 5 million veterans. What's wrong with embracing our country and those who fought for our freedoms?
I mean, what do you think? Obviously, the three of us here combined find this pretty disgusting. But what do you think about this op-ed? Should we be proud to be an American? Should we still use the Star-Spangled Banner? Should we salute that American flag before a football game?
Or the other side of her argument, do you think that it's being used for making money for the NFL and being rolled out in front of all of these fans, this contract that she says is signed by the Pentagon? What do you think about it? Friends at FoxNews.com. It's an interesting debate, and it's obviously turning heads this morning.
Makes me pretty angry, though. All right, turning now to some other headlines we are following. The Supreme Court issuing a deadline to Hawaii, giving the state until Tuesday to respond to President Trump's motion to block a judge's latest ruling on his travel ban. The White House seeking to undo Honolulu's U.S. District Judge Derek Watson's ruling, which expands the list of exemptions for those seeking visas from 6 Muslim-majority countries. And one of the holiest sites in all of Jerusalem is back open just days after a terror attack. Israel reopening the Temple Mount and Noble Sanctuary compound this morning, 2 days after a deadly shooting that killed 2 Israeli police officers. The 3 Palestinian gunmen also killed in that attack. The sacred site is shared by both Jews and Muslims. Also this, Kellyanne Conway slammed the media, saying much of the criticism she faces is for being a woman. Take a listen.
They're going to criticize policy. That's terrific, but criticizing, I mean, how I look or what I wear or how I speak, it totally undercuts, modern feminism, saying that they're for women.
Amen to that. Well, speaking to the crowd at the Family Leader Summit in Iowa, Conway encouraged political discussions to stick to policy. And you know what? She's dealt with so much. Agree with her or not, there have been so many personal attacks on her, I would say.
Yeah, which are awful.
Being a woman, yeah.
Which are wrong. All right, coming up.
All you hear from the mainstream media, Trump's ties to Russia. But our next guest has followed the paper trail and connected the dots on the Democrats' ties to Russia. Daniel Halper joins us next.
And welcome back. Well, the months of harping on President Trump's alleged ties to Russia may end up backfiring on Democrats. You heard me right, as questions arise over their ties to Russia. Daniel Halper has connected the dots. He's a contributing editor for the Washington Free Beacon and author of the book Clinton Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Great to be here.
You know what the liberal media is going to say about this? Wait. Now you're trying to paint Democrats as the colluders in charge. Daniel, back up this claim. Where does this lead?
Well, look, there's serious questions as to how these Russians even got into the United States in the first place. There's been reports that these Russians were let in by the Justice Department, which, of course, was run by the Obama administration just last year. So I'm not excusing any action that might have been taken by any Republican or the Trump administration or any Trump official, but there's serious questions as to why these people were in America in the first place. There's also, anybody who does lobbying for a foreign entity has to disclose their contacts, their number of contacts with the Democrats based on their own disclosures that raise serious questions as to what these people were actually doing, what their aims were, and who let them in.
Let's talk about the DNC, because that seems to be at the heart of all of this, the Democratic National Committee, and a contractor at the center of all of these allegations. What's this about?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's, look, I think there's a lot of questions about who the DNC was talking to, why they might have been reaching out to these contractors and stuff. And I think there's going to be a lot more to come out in the days and weeks to come.
So days and weeks to come, whether or not these contractors, the DNC, were somehow talking with the Russian government during the election campaign, what information was being handed to them?
Yeah, we just don't know at this point, I think.
So the question around this particular attorney who was in the United States and what had her visa extended under the Obama administration, how she was able to even in the first place be here and then even meet at Trump Tower.
Exactly. I mean, why did she get a special waiver, which was required for her to be able to enter? Apparently, at some point, she was not able to enter, and then she was allowed to enter via the Obama administration. So I think those behind-the-scenes discussions, Loretta Lynch has tried to blame other people in a statement. She said it's up to the Department of Homeland Security, it's up to various other governmental entities. But I think these people need to explain why these Russians who they suspected, who they're now claiming are suspecting of ties to various government entities, perhaps with nefarious connections, why were they let into the first place, especially if the U.S. government at that time believed that the Russian government was trying to sabotage this election? I think President Obama's reaction to this, I think President Trump has raised some questions and other people have. Why President Obama's reaction to this, and Hillary Clinton even has questioned this, why did he react the way he did, and does he take some blame for not reacting properly?
And in 5 seconds, we've just got a little bit of time left, but those intercepts the president had been talking about, listening to Trump Tower, is more of that going to come out with this now that they seem to be aware of who he was meeting with?
I think so. It sort of raises the question, right? Did those intercepts, if they happened, did they occur after this meeting? Were they in response to this meeting? Were these people let in order to be able to track them, and then somehow did this lead to those intercepts?
Right. Daniel, good to see you this morning. Fascinating. Seems like we're
Thank you very much.
Peeling this onion back further and further. All right, coming up here on the show, President Trump promised to build a big, beautiful border wall, and this morning we've learned construction is underway. But wait until you hear the latest complaint against that border wall.
I think he's doing really well.
And Apple fans, brace yourself. The new iPhone could be the most expensive yet. Are we going to see an iPhone Pro? Could we see 3 new iPhones in September?
Time now for your news by the numbers. 400 pounds. That's how much marijuana investigators found inside 15 new cars made in Mexico and shipped right here to the U.S. The pot found pressed into packages hidden in spare tire compartments and trunks in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Next, $1,400. That's how much you may have to shell out to get your hands on the 10th anniversary iPhone this fall. The new model is expected to have a brighter screen, thinner body, and better camera. And Clayton already has a pre-order in, if I'm a betting man. And 7, that's the season of Game of Thrones beginning tonight on HBO. Winter finally here for those of the 7 kingdoms. So who will betray who this season? We'll find out starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Clayton, over to you.
Love it.
I know. I love that
We're
show.
doing it in the Morris house tonight. All right. Well, the beginning stages of President Trump's border wall in South Texas are reportedly underway, according to the Texas Observer. The administration will build the first section of the wall through a Santa Ana wildlife refuge.
Well, as you can imagine, some on the left are now saying if the wall is constructed there, it will essentially destroy the refuge. But isn't the goal to protect the American people, not wildlife?
Well, here to weigh in is Steve Cortez. He's a spokesman for Hispanic 100, a member of the Trump Hispanic Advisory Council, and a Fox News contributor. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Clayton.
All right, so what are the holdups here? What are the problems?
Well, there's not a problem. I think what's happening here is our president, who is really President Promise Keeper, is delivering on a promise that he made to the American people as a candidate. And I can tell you, as somebody who worked with his campaign, nothing got the rousing applause during the rallies compared to the wall. And I think the reason, by the way, is that he wants to put America's security first. And I will say, as an Hispanic, some people try to make this seem as though it's anti-Mexican or anti-immigrant. Nothing could be further from the case. In fact, you know, when I put my family to sleep last night, I locked the door, not because I hate those who are on the outside, but because I love those who are on the inside. Well, America's front door has been wide open for years. It's been reckless and lawless. And this president, I think, is showing real leadership by saying the safety and security, both economic and actual security of our people comes first. And good fences often mean good neighbors. It's time for a fence on our southern border.
Well, certainly something that he promised throughout the campaign. Also, this reports that the Trump administration, they may expand the ability for immigration officials to deport illegal immigrants throughout the United States if they've been here, if they find they've been here for less than 90 days. You say that this is a positive move forward.
Abby, I think it absolutely is. You know, I think ICE, unfortunately, they've been in such a bad position during the past administration to try to do their jobs and try to effectively fight with one hand tied behind their back. So, for instance, if you couldn't be immediately deported unless you were caught within 100 miles of the border. Well, that's just creating de facto a secondary border. And, you know, a lot of these folks aren't dumb. They know that. They know if I get 100 miles in, I'm somewhat untouchable. And the reason this is so important that we be able to instantly deport people who just came over the border is if we don't do that, guess what? If we give them a hearing and say you can stay, they don't show up. And we know this. ICE told us this of families who came in and were allowed to stay in the United States and supposed to report for their hearings. 70% did not report.
Would Congress have to approve that ability if the White House were to put that forward, or is that something they could do through executive action?
No, I believe through executive action. That's what I've read from the White House's proclamation. So I think this is just smart and saying, look, if you just got here and you're illegal anywhere in the United States, it doesn't have to be near our border. What's the difference if you're in Wisconsin, if you're very far from the border? You're still not supposed to be here. And so you can be deported immediately if necessary. So I think, again, this is just sensible. If we don't have a border, we don't have a country. We're not anti-immigrant. We love legal immigration. And it's an insult to them, by the way, if we allow people to come in as they please and cheat and game the system.
So no trouble with them with this wildlife refuge? I mean, where this border wall would run through?
Look, of course, we always have to be sensitive to the environment. That's important. I don't know enough. I'm not a biologist. I don't know enough about the specifics of that wildlife refuge. But we're talking about a wall that's not going to be very big. Construction, I think, can be done in a responsible way. So, but also, I would say this. Even if there is some minimal damage, let's say, to wildlife there, the protection of the American people always has to be paramount above wildlife, above foreign nationals, above political correctness. America first.
All right, we'll leave it there. Steve Cortes, good to see you this morning.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much.
All right, still ahead, a near disaster on the runway. A fighter pilot ejects from a fighter jet just seconds before it bursts into a fireball. The incredible video that you've got to see this morning.
Plus, do you have a younger brother or a younger sister? Yes. Are they always getting into trouble, even maybe with the law? Well, it turns out birth order does matter. We've got the science to back it up. That's why my sister is such a troublemaker.
And myself.
You're the second?
Fascinating. Oh, yeah, number 2.
That's why she's You all right, Rick?
He's got brain freeze.
He's like, he's going to talk, but he can't. It's your shot of the morning.
Guess
Rick.
What? It is BOGO Day.
What?
And Rick is hanging out with Fudgy the Whale from Carvel because today's National Ice Cream Day. So.
BOGO stands for buy one, get one cone free.
You're okay, Rick?
From Carvel Ice
I'm
Cream.
Good.
Hey,
Thanks
Rick, why are you choking?
I was choking.
Oh.
I'm glad you described BOGO. Buy one, get one free. That's amazing.
Yeah, right?
So I was reading in the information they give us beforehand that the average American eats 23 pounds of ice cream a year.
We're going to do that today, Rick. Come on.
I believe it.
We get our
In one sitting.
Yeah, how much have you eaten already today?
I've had 2 spoons and I choked on the first one.
What's your favorite flavor?
You know what? I love all ice cream, but I do like that vanilla. You can turn it into any other flavor.
Ooh, a good vanilla. Well, Rick,
and good vanilla.
The weather is beautiful across the country. Perfect day for ice cream. What can people expect?
It is. Let's talk a little bit of weather out there. For one thing, we're going to have a few more storms just because it's summer and it's hot and humid, and anytime you have that this time of year, you get these garden variety thunderstorms. Although we'll dry out a little bit today across parts of the Northeast and across much of the northern plains as well. But much of the Southeast is going to see some more storms as well as the Four Corners. Temperature-wise, though, this is going to be our story. Heat advisories now in effect right across the central part of the country, and that's going to build this week. So get ready for another hot and humid week coming into play here, guys.
Thanks to Carvel, and happy National Ice Cream Day. Please keep sending in your favorite flavors. Friends at FoxNews.com, or you can tweet us too.
Did you notice how short his weather report was there and how quickly he went to his ice cream bite?
All right, I'm done.
Makes sense.
Priorities.
He's like, it's beautiful out. I'm going back to eating.
He wants to hang out with Fudgy the Whale. Yeah. He doesn't want to do that.
All right, turning out to some other headlines we're following. Terrifying moments that were all caught on camera. A fighter jet pilot making a life-saving decision, ejecting himself from his burning plane just seconds before it explodes on a runway in Belarus, with a plane traveling down the runway when flames began shooting from its engines, the landing gear collapsing as the jet continues down the tarmac. The pilot was able to eject as an aircraft continues on in a raging ball of fire. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, and thank goodness he did eject himself. Also, this playtime takes a dangerous turn. A mom facing charges for allegedly towing 3 kids in a toy wagon behind her car.
Come on.
Oregon police say Alana Donahue drove her 2 young children and their 8-year-old cousin around a roundabout at 5 miles an hour. I don't care what speed you're going. That is crazy. But witnesses claim that she was going up to 30 miles per hour at times and that the kids were nearly hit when she pulled into a nearby store. Donahue tells police she didn't think it was a big deal. She's now charged with child endangerment. Kids, something not to do at home, right? And another sight to see: a stolen car goes airborne, slamming into a tree and flipping over several times. The driver first struck a parked car before losing control, flying into this Michigan yard. Police are now looking for these 4 suspects shown crawling out from under the wreckage. They're accused of stealing that car earlier this month. And there's this, a first date this couple will never forget. 2 kayakers are rescued as violent rushing waters capsize them. Watch. The big question, though, will they get a second date? Firefighters, this is, the serious story. Firefighters in Indianapolis pulling a 23-year-old woman to safety. The victim, as you can imagine, swallowing a lot of water, causing her to be in serious but stable condition. The 24-year-old man was able to get out of on his own, and he is in fair condition. Emergency crews are now warning people to stay out of the water until levels subside.
First date.
Talk about a first date,
Yeah.
my goodness. Stick with ice cream, people.
Yeah, go to the movies. That's the second
a very
date.
serious situation, but if you're looking for a sign,
Yeah.
that could be it.
Or a memory. You can always talk about it.
All right, I love this new research that just came out. You think about your birth order in your family, where you come down, do you have siblings? Well, a new bit of research just out this morning shows that birth order really does matter. In fact, it shows that those who are second children are far more likely to be delinquent, have big problems, end up maybe getting arrested.
End up in jail.
Yes, just like in my family.
Where do you fall?
I was born first. My sister
course, so
was
you're perfect.
Oh yeah, my sister was the one who was always on run from the law.
Well, so I was
Locked
number
up.
2. So I read this study,
No, she
and
wasn't.
I
Don't call
totally
me.
relate to this. This is what the study says. It says in families with 2 or more children, second-born boys are on the order of 20 to 40% more likely to be disciplined in school and enter the criminal justice system compared to people like Clayton, firstborn boys, even when they compare
Angels,
to their
really.
siblings. So I was a pretty terrible child. My older sister, she was perfect.
Yeah.
I ran away from home multiple times. I even went to the bus stop when I was like 5 years old. Packed my bag, I was gone. My mom bought the book, How to Deal with Terrible Twos, when I came along. I'm
You're in
serious.
trouble.
Yeah.
Total trouble. Can you see that? How many people here are second born in your family? Second born children? Yeah. Oh, here, this guy. Were you ever arrested? Oh,
Were you a good child?
there's still time.
Were you a good
child?
Very
Very
good.
good. He's
okay, so
angelic.
hey.
I was the firstborn. My brother, who is a guy, secondborn, he's not in jail. He's on the Upper East Side.
Is he a good person though?
He's
Well
very-
behaved?
But you will say that I went a more traditional route. Like I went to law school. I focused on always getting good grades. My brother was just whatever. He now makes way more money than
Because
me.
you know what? If you're second born, you've got to get attention. Because
yeah.
the first child is spoiled and they get everything.
Yeah.
So when you're born number 2, it's like, hi, I'm here.
Over here, and that's why a lot of them, at least in the family, the ones who are the last born or the second born,
They're just trying to survive.
They end up being comedians. Most comedians are second born children.
Send us your thoughts, because there are a lot of you out there with kids and families, or you may stack up number 2 in your family. What do you think? Do you think this study is true? If you are number 2, are you more likely to get in trouble?
And
than
do you
the firstborn?
and also, do you think this guy's an angel?
No.
Let us know.
Pure evil.
He says he's never been in trouble. Wink, wink. All right, still ahead. The mainstream media and Democrats stepping up for their cries for impeachment.
So many of us are attempting in every way that we possibly can to unveil the criminal activity.
But are Democrats just trying to fool their base into thinking it actually could happen? Guy Benson, Richard Fowler, here to debate that coming up next.
And a huge show still ahead. Dr. Alveda King, Herald General Jack Keane, and Jason Chaffetz are all here live. And Rick is still eating his ice cream.
Welcome back. 43 minutes after the hour. The mainstream media and Democrats ramping up their calls for impeachment.
So many of us are attempting in every way that we possibly can to unveil the criminal activity.
We learn more and more about the Trump campaign's relationship with Russian officials and what appears to be an ongoing effort to obstruct justice.
I think impeachment is something that really has an impact on the country. The law is certainly clear. When the facts are clear, then this Congress will make a decision.
Here to react, Fox News contributor Guy Benson and Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor Richard Fowler. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Guy, kick it off. Are they delusional? Are they going too far with this?
Definitely overreach. I think my mind is open to the possibility that at some point we could get evidence that is actually impeachable. High crimes and misdemeanors, something along those lines. We may not have that information until Robert Mueller's investigation is complete, but based on everything that we know today, for House Democrats to be filing articles of impeachment, I think is massively premature. It makes them look unserious. It makes them look like they're on a witch hunt. And I think it actually helps Donald Trump and the president and his team because it energizes his base, it energizes supporters, and it makes sort of Trump's skeptical conservatives like myself say the Democrats are way off base here. I'm going to show up on Fox and Friends and defend him.
Understood. Richard, do you agree?
That was a good one, Guy. I tend to agree with Guy. I wouldn't take all of it, but I do think that impeachment is a little bit far out right now. What we do know is this. There were meetings. The Don Jr. emails are definitely problematic. The fact that the White House has changed its story is problematic. And as Charles Krauthammer and other top conservatives have said, this gives the White House less credibility. Is it impeachable? Not quite yet. I think we have to wait to see what the Mueller investigation points out. And I think it's important for Democrats right now to focus on getting our message out there to the American people. What are we for and what are we against? And let the Mueller investigation take its course. Because trust me, Mueller will have something to say in the next couple of months.
You guys are in agreement here. I'm going to try to throw a little red meat in this fight here. Did the Don Jr. meeting change the election in any way, shape, or form? Richard, take that one.
It's impossible to know if the Don Jr. meeting changed the election until we find out what actually happened and who was in the meeting. Remember, this meeting started with 4 people. Now we're at 6 people. By next week, we might be at 20 people that were in this meeting.
It's 8. I think we're up to 8.
8, sorry. The numbers change so fast, Guy, I can't remember.
But again, I don't think, do you really think that there's any possibility that this particular meeting with this woman impacted the 2016 election? I mean, unless you can find evidence that she and her friends somehow convinced through this meeting Hillary Clinton not to campaign in Michigan and Wisconsin, then there's nothing.
I agree there, Guy. I agree. I think the Clinton campaign has its fair share of problems. But here's what we do know. All 17 intelligence agencies have said the Russians interfered with our election. Did they change a vote? No. But the fact that they engaged in our election, is that problematic? It absolutely is. And now we have to figure out whether or not Trump, the Trump family, Trump associates, Trump campaign people, the Trump White House, who was talking to the Russians, what was said to the Russians, and what possible impact could that have had on this election, the potential impact. And we don't know that until the Mueller investigation takes its course and until we sort of get to the bottom of who met with who, what was said, what information was exchanged.
But I guess drilling down into this one female attorney or female representative, if you will, wasn't she brought into this country by the Obama administration?
I think that's a red herring. It doesn't matter who she was brought into the administration with. Don Jr. should not have met with her, especially after the email exchange showed that she was somehow connected to the Russians. And on top of that, Don Jr. changed his story 3 times. It went from, it was just a meeting, I wasn't sure, there was only 3 people, now there's 7 people in the meeting. My email sort of speaks to the fact that I knew she was connected to the Russians. So this is problematic. I think both Democrats and Republicans agree here.
But Guy, didn't that woman also work as sort of a Democratic lobbyist in many respects?
She was tied to this Democratic firm called Fusion GPS. I think that's weird that she ends up in this room with Donald Trump Jr. I think that there's a good possibility that she was a Kremlin cutout. Whether the Democrats have anything to do with it, I have no idea. If they were trying to bait Donald Trump Jr. into doing something shady with the Russians, well, mission accomplished. He did something shady with the Russians, and that was on him. But if this was on the Democrats, if the Democrats were behind this, they never used it before the election against the Trump campaign. So I'm a little bit skeptical of that theory. I just want to go back real quickly to the initial premise here, which is impeachment and the I word. I think it's very important for voters, Republican voters in particular, to think about this. Right now, Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House. As long as we don't have bombshell, new, real evidence of crimes and impeachable offenses, impeachment's going nowhere. You've got Democratic backbenchers sort of pushing for this. But in the event that Democrats win the House next year, I think a Democratic House is going to move forward with impeachment regardless of what the evidence is.
Interesting.
I think we have to see what the Mueller investigation says first, but I think Guy is right. And I would say to Republicans listening, when this information starts to roll out, right, and I think you have to have an open ear to what's being said and not just say this is partisan rancor, because there's a there when you read these emails.
Too.
Oh, absolutely.
All right,
absolutely.
Guys, we got to leave it here. Great discussion, a lot to think about. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Rich, for being here. Coming up, Congressman John Lewis tries to give President Trump a history lesson.
I think the person we have in Washington today is uncaring, know very, very little about the struggle and the history of the Civil Rights Movement.
Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., here to react next. And Vice President Pence has a message for the media. If you think you're tired of winning now, just you wait.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. Well, Democrats continuing their personal attacks on President Trump this weekend, calling into question his knowledge of the civil rights movement. Watch.
I think the person we have in Washington today is uncaring, know very, very little about the struggle and the history of the Civil Rights Movement.
Well, here to weigh in, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Fox News contributor Dr. Alveda King. Dr. King, great to see you this morning. Just on the face, listening to what he had to say, David Axelrod the other day in an interview with Representative had this to say and pushed back on this whole George Wallace comparison. I want to play this and get your take on it.
What about the president and his actions suggest to you that he is in that tradition, the tradition of a famed, notorious segregationist?
Well, I think this president right now is asking for the records, the voter registration records of people all over America. That is a form of intimidation. That's a form of harassment.
Dr. King, your thoughts?
Well, first I'd like to say that the president, of course, is leading the charge for civil rights today for the little unborn persons in the womb who have a right to live. I'm director of civil rights for the unborn, and I say that everybody's civil rights count, from the womb to the tomb, the young, the old, the sick, the elderly, the babies in the womb, and everything. And so the president is certainly fighting for civil rights today, and he has surrounded himself with African American leaders and everyone that is supporting. We don't have to defend the president. I believe President Trump might agree that we are defending America. He's leading the charge and we're supporting him. Now, at the African American Museum, for example, he was knowledgeable of much of the history of African Americans, and when we stopped and we looked at some of the displays, the little slave manacles and things, he said, this is terrible. You can't do that to people. And so President Trump is surrounding himself with knowledgeable people. President Trump himself is a very brilliant man. I believe he's compassionate. If you go and look at all of the executive orders, the things for women in science, for African American education, for moving into our communities with Dr. Ben Carson at HUD, there are so many things that he's doing, and he's working with African American leaders.
The problem is, Doctor, is people are lazy and they don't want to actually look at the right things that are being done. It's an easy attack line, right, for Democrats to constantly hit Republicans for